Good evening, everybody. Welcome back inside our Milford TV Studio B for this week's edition of the Milford Informer. I am your host, Tim Coet. As we all anxiously anticipate the start of some brighter, warmer weather, we're happy to have you with us on this dreary Friday night to get you caught up on several news and sports items from this past week. For more on what we have coming up, let's show you tonight's top stories rundown. Tonight, we will conclude our three-part panel discussion on potential school start time changes as the panel gets into how the proposed changes would impact after-school programs. Also tonight, we'll hear from members of the Citizens for Milford, as well as local volunteers who participated in last weekend's Milford Beautification Day. And later in sports, we'll share a pair of Milford High School baseball highlights as the Scarlet Hawks hosted two of their biggest rivals over at Pheno Field earlier this week. Tonight we wrap up our three-part panel discussion on the potential change of school start times in Milford. The final portion of the discussion delves into how certain after-school activities would be impacted if these changes were put into action. We've talked a little bit, addressing in parts the athletics aspect of this change, and really just looking at maybe athletics specifically and after-school activities in general. Obviously, that's going to be one of the biggest components of this change is how do those activities sort of line up with this new school day. What have the discussions been like to that? I know that there are still answers that you guys are looking into, but where has that discussion kind of gone to this point?
Well, Pete Boucher, the athletic director, he's on our committee too. He's currently out of district, otherwise he'd probably be here too. But, you know, I guess truthfully, Peter's concerns are with our away games. There are a couple different districts, 4 or 5 different districts anyways, that are a good hour away. So there are some like in the fall, for example. I think in the fall is when it would be most problematic. If you have a soccer game that's in Taunton and we get out of school at 3 o'clock, how could we get there for a 4 o'clock start? So we'd have to work with the Hockomock League and be able to make adjustments to schedules, which I think they all can be done. It's just a matter of having those conversations and having other communities be open to adapting to the changes that we made. So I think that's probably one of the biggest issues. Practice times are going to shift a little bit. Up to, I would think about a half hour or so. The earliest they could get on a field is probably 3:15, where now maybe teams are starting at 2:45 or so. And because of that, there are some students that do both sports and music. So music practices, in some instances, start after athletics. So it would kind of push that back for another half hour. But then one of the other things that we had to consider was about adjusting school times. As Mr. Morcona already said, we can't have all the buses out on the streets at the same time for a number of reasons, money being one, but congestion being another, and then trying to find manpower to drive the buses is another problem. But if we flip the two times, the elementary schools would get out before the high schools and middle schools, which would mean that from our survey data, we found that there were a lot of families that rely on high school and middle school students to pick up their younger siblings in school at the elementary schools. So if we flip them, it wouldn't be able to happen. So there'd be a whole group of people that would certainly have to find a different way. So I think that was another consideration that we did. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add about that. I can't remember if I...
We talked a little bit about the nighttime, when it would start to get dark out, and
Yeah.
whether or not, to be conscious of if it was going to be dark and we had students, walking home from a bus stop. So
Right.
certainly that was a factor that we talked about as well.
And then the other point being, if the elementary did start early, we'd have elementary students at bus stops at 7 o'clock in the
That's
morning.
right.
In the winter when it's dark, and I don't think we really want that. So that's why we looked more at starting, say, 8:30 and then 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
That seems to make the most sense. One of the things, going back to sports, luckily in Milford, we have 2 turf fields that are lit.
Yep.
So that does help us a lot, and I think a lot of the communities around us are doing the same things for a lot of reasons. I mean, it is New England, so it is tough to keep grass. So the turf field makes sense. They can be used, all different hours, and it gives the flexibility to the sports teams to play a little later. I know you don't like them.
Athletes, it's been shown when you change the start time to a later time that the athletes do better.
Mm-hmm.
They do better on the field, and they do better academically as well. So it certainly helps all the adolescents and not just the chosen few.
Mm-hmm.
So really worthwhile I spoke to Pete about this before,
Mm-hmm.
that it benefits the athletes. They may have to change their times and have it be inconvenient and stuff, but they're going to do better.
And that's an important point, because I think, a lot of the things that we talked about and a lot of the barriers, sure, it involves students, but most of them are kind of adult, I don't know, the adult issues, I guess is the best way to put it, but they're things that adults are used to. They're used to having it a certain way, so adults would have to adapt kind of either their behavior or their way of thinking around whichever decision we made. So I think that was an important discovery for us, that all signs point to health-wise, both physically and emotionally, socially, it makes absolute sense to make this change. Are people going to be inconvenienced, and are people going to have to make changes in their lives? Absolutely. So we just have to work together to try to help everybody make the adjustment.
And I think the great way that you've laid that out in communication that I've had with you is kind of looking at the technical changes versus the adaptive changes in making a move like this. And Nicole, maybe I can start this part of the conversation with you. A lot of those adaptive changes are those ones that are going to happen at home, with parents, whether it's routines of getting kids to and from school, whether it's the just changes in family routine. How is that something that when you start to think about potentially if you were to implement those changes in your lives in your own life, how difficult that would kind of be to navigate, at least in the early days?
Yeah, so I think for me personally, a little less than maybe some families that have younger kids. So my kids are older. It will mean that my husband and I will probably have to leave for work before our kids have to leave for school, but they're old enough that that they can get themselves out of the house okay and get themselves to school. For families with younger kids, that is going to be more of a challenge to deal with. And so that's certainly going to be a big adjustment if you've got littler kids who are in the elementary schools and you've got to be at work at one time and school starts later. That's going to be a big challenge. I think at the high school level, it's probably a little bit less of a challenge. I think it will probably make my house a happier place in the morning. Yeah, exactly. A few less cranky kids wander around.
Right.
But yeah, I also appreciate that. Again, my kids are older, and so they are much more independent and able to get themselves to school than people with younger kids.
And I would say, my children are a little bit younger, and we, as a family, have always had to try to figure out plans for morning and after school, because really, the school day doesn't meet the needs of, even though I work in a school system, it doesn't entirely meet the needs of my work schedule and our family. So we've always had to make different arrangements for the morning for our children and after school. And I think that when Mr. Morcone could speak about the community use extended day programs that we have at the elementary schools, and there are hundreds of children that come to school for morning extended day, so we start at 7 at Memorial School, and there's students that participate in extended day after school, because really the school day for most families that are working doesn't really work, and you often have to come up with different plans for your children as well. So I think that we're, as Mr. Consigli had mentioned, we start talking about that as a group, but everybody's family needs are so diverse and different that we have to make the decision what's best for children and adolescents, and then kind of work through those changes as a community.
Mm-hmm.
Another aspect that will be impacted by this is obviously teachers and faculty members at the school. What have the conversations been like with faculty members, and what's maybe the feedback there on how they might adapt to a change like this?
Again, it runs a gamut. There are people that are 100% for it, and there are people that, for one reason or another, aren't so sure. Some of the things that I've heard from staff members is certainly childcare. If I work here in Milford and I have my children go to school in another district and they start earlier and get out earlier than me, then I'm going to have to try to rearrange things to figure that out. Other concerns were, if I have a job, I work in this district, but then I have a job after school, that's going to all change as well. So again, like you had mentioned, we can make the change, we can put it on paper, but people are going to have to make these adaptive changes based on their own lives, really, and their own lifestyles. So those are just a couple of different examples. And I'll go back to what Dr. Perriello said, science is science, and I think the research is bared out that it's proven fact that it's most beneficial for adolescents.
I really appreciate all of you taking the time to join us today. I guess I would close, Craig, with just sort of a broad question of what comes next. Where does the committee go from here? What are maybe the next steps moving forward?
So I don't know, by the time this airs, we probably would have gone to school committee already with a recommendation. But our committee meets monthly. But a couple of the things that we're doing right now is we're surveying some of the area superintendents around us to find out what the conversation has been in their communities around school start times. I've been in contact with the Chamber of Commerce. We have a meeting scheduled so that we can kind of talk through maybe some of the employers' concerns in the region. And then, I think once we get through all of those barriers, we're just going to keep trying to listen to voices and see if we can make adjustments to whatever we're going to consider. So I think whether it's public forums or just having coffee with people, I think it's important that if people have concerns, they find one of us and just lay out your concerns so we can try to address them.
Last weekend, the citizens from Milford, as well as a host of members from the community, gathered together for the town's annual Beautification Day. Our cameras were roaming around downtown to hear from the volunteers as they helped spruce up Milford for the spring and summer months.
Today is our 5th annual Milford Beautification Day. It is actually the brainchild of Citizens for Milford member Amy Sanborn, who is not here at our headquarters right now because she's out picking up trash around town with dozens of other volunteers. We do this at the end of April every year. We invite everyone from the community to come and help us pick up trash. We have the youth group from St. Mary's Church, as well as a number of young people from the Milford Youth Center.
So there's like different roads that everyone's doing. So like the highlighted, the highlighted ones are like what you're doing. and I think we're going around the youth center and over here.
We're pretty excited. We're gonna see wherever we need to go, try to do the best we can, pick up whatever we can, and we are excited.
In the days before we meet here, we actually have people do trash reconnaissance. We drive around town to find where the most trash is. And the good news is that this year we're finding there is not as much trash on the streets and in our parks as there has been in the last few years.
Friends of the Trail are helping direct everyone to specific spots on the trail that we like to call trouble spots, where trash tends to accumulate. We've noticed over the years it tends to pile up for one reason or another. And we know there's a lot of interest in the people of Milford to want to help clean up the trail as part of the Town Beautification Day. So we're just here to help lend a hand and direct people to where we want to go.
Today, we're so excited to have a lot of scouts. We have 2 Daisy troops, a Boy Scout troop, and a Girl Scout troop.
So we're here celebrating Arbor Day, which is a day where we celebrate the nature and our trees, and it shows that we love our environment and want to make it better for the future.
We have a couple of different types of trees here, and we're hoping for people to come by and maybe pick up a couple and plant them maybe in their yard.
We also have a new program we're starting this year of planting hostas at Louisa Lake. So something great for families of small children if you don't want to have them picking up trash or getting into that sort of thing, or walking along the side of the road with traffic. This is something you can do that's also along the trail and something help last a little bit longer than just picking up trash.
Typically, we have about 100 people come each year. So far, I think we've had about 50 people, and we've been doing it over a few days. So we launched on Thursday, and we had 4 volunteers from the Worcester County Sheriff's Department Community Service Program, and they picked up all the trash on Dilla Street on Thursday, 35 large bags, plus 3 large bags at the top of Purchase Street, across from Purchase Street Market. Plus we have individuals who just want to come out and clean the community, families, lots of people willing to roll up their sleeves and help clean up the town. We're hoping that everybody will make an effort to ensure that once we get Milford cleaned up and beautified, that we'll keep it clean.
And it really makes you feel good about yourself, that you're participating in your community, you're helping out. And I think it just makes the community better, and it would be really nice if a lot of other people helped out too.
Recently, the Ruth Ann Bleakney Senior Center hosted a luncheon to thank their volunteers for all of their hard work and dedication throughout the year. Ryan Farrell was once again over at the Senior Center to provide the following Milford TV member report.
Hi everyone, Ryan Farrell here, down at the Milford Senior Center for another one of their great events. Shall we?
Well, this is one of our best events. This is when we honor all of our volunteers and we pick a person of the year, which this year we picked Robert DeVita. He is such a big help to us. And the room has been transformed into a golf course because one of Bobby's favorite things to do, besides help us out, is golf. So we decided to go with that theme, and I have to give a shout out to Nancy Potter because she really did a lot of work making this room look the way it does. So I have to thank her for that, and I have to thank all of my volunteers, and especially Bob DeVita for being our Senior of the Year. He is just an awesome person. We are so lucky to have him.
So I have the great honor of standing here with our Senior of the Year. Thank you so much for taking time out of your already talkative day to just have a few words with us. What does this honor mean to you?
Well, this honor, it feels good in a lot of different ways. It's wonderful to know that you've been recognized, and it's wonderful to be acknowledged for all the work that you do. But as I have stated earlier is that it's a labor of love for me. I enjoy the work. I enjoy volunteering. This senior center is a spectacular place. The services and all of the events that they put on for the seniors in the town of Milford and the community towns is unparalleled in the state, I believe. So I'm glad to be part of that, and it is just rewarding and fulfilling for me to be able to do that.
It just shows the excitement and the volunteers that it takes to run this center. And I talk about it all the time, is that when you come down here in the morning and you see some people have nowhere to go. They have no one to talk to. And you come into the lobby and it's a cup of coffee, it's a piece of pastry, it's a hello, it's a how are you, it's Sue Clark, Catherine Zeisma, Ed Roth, Dino, all these people that just say, how are you? Because they truly, truly care. And that's what makes this senior center so important to this community.
Without the volunteers, I think we all know that this center would not be what it is. I mean, we are so busy, and we just can't keep it staffed with paid people. So we are so grateful for all their hours and all their dedication, making this building and this facility as special as it is.
There's always room to have fun, and if you can't have fun, then maybe you ought to think about doing something else.
Despite another week of dull and dreary weather, we still managed to get out to Pheno Field to cover a pair of exciting games for the Scarlet Hawks baseball team. Let's take a look at how things went down for the Hawks throughout the week. Milford started off the week looking to break out of a 4-game losing streak that saw the team drop under the 500 mark for the first time all season. Getting back on track would not be easy, however, as Milford would play host to the Davenport Division-leading Stoughton Black Knights. This game would be a pitcher's duel between Milford ace Danny Corsini and Stoughton starter Brady Conlon through the early innings. Corsini would open the ball game by striking out the Knights' Cyan Swarzewski. Corsini would set down the first 5 batters he faced, and after allowing a 2-out base hit in the second, he'd quickly end the frame, inducing a pop-up to first base off the bat of his counterpart Conlon. The Stoughton righty was also sharp out of the gates. After stranding a runner in the first, Conlon would retire the side in order in the second, capped off by the strikeout of Nicholas Womet. Corsini's first bit of trouble would come in the third inning. Danny would walk the number 8 hitter to open the frame. After a series of pickoff moves, Corsini would end up being called for a balk that would push the runner into scoring position. Coach Dion would spend the better part of 5 minutes arguing the call, but to no avail, and it was clear the situation rattled Corsini, as his next pitch would be wild, allowing the runner to advance all the way to third. That would open the door for Zach Paquette, who would drive a pitch deep enough to center field for the runner to score on the sac fly to give Stoughton a 1-0 lead. After Corsini shut down the inning from there, the Milford bats would be quick to respond. Luke Rosa would pace the bottom of the third with a leadoff single before the Hawks' number 9 man Justin Appleby would come to the plate looking to be aggressive against Conlon.
Second hit of the game for the Scarlet Hawks. And now first pitch swinging, Justin Appleby drives one deep out to left field. This is going to be well over everybody's head, and it's going to roll off towards the left center field fence. No problem for Luke Rosa to race around the bases. He will score as Justin Appleby slides into third base with an RBI triple that will tie this game at 1.
In the fourth inning, the Hawks would have the speed of Carter Scudo on first with 2 away, when Nicholas Womet would get a hold of a Conlon pitch, driving it out to left center. With Scudo off on contact, he'd have no problem flying around the bases to score, pushing the Hawks into a 2-1 lead. From there, both starters would settle the game down until the late innings. With Danny Corsini starting to tire in the 6th, he'd allow the first 3 Stoughton batters to reach, loading the bases with nobody out. Coach Dion would then bring in the hard-throwing sophomore Mario Lee to try and wriggle out of the jam. Lee would end up inducing back-to-back pop-ups on just the first 2 pitches to bring about the first 2 outs of the inning. Lee would then walk the next batter, allowing an inherited runner to score before ending the inning with the score now tied at 2. 2 of Milford's captains would look to spark a rally in the home half of the 6th, with Corsini and Tyler Almeida both reaching with 1 out. Carter Scudo would be the next batter up, and he'd send a slow roller to short. It looked for a moment like the Knights would turn the inning-ending double play, but the relay throw to first would get away from the first baseman, and that would allow Corsini to come around to score to give the Hawks the lead back at 3-2. Mario Lee would then return to the mound for the 7th, and after getting into a bit of trouble with 2 outs, Lee would slam the door, striking out Jacob Kaplan to end the ball game. Milford brings an end to their losing streak as they take down the first-place Stoughton Black Knights, winning by a final of 3-2. 2 days later, the team was back at Pheno looking to string back-to-back wins together as they took on one of their biggest Hockomock League rivals in the Oliver Ames Tigers. The Scarlet Hawks would have plenty of chances to get on the scoreboard through the first 2 innings. Matt Shaver would reach on a 1-out walk in the first. He'd then try to advance into scoring position on the steal attempt, but OA's Jake Ehrlich would catch him with a great throw to second base, and Milford would fail to score in the inning. Danny Corsini would then lead off the bottom of the second with a double out to left center. Tyler Almeida would then walk to set up 2 on with nobody out, but Tiger starter Nicholas Boudreau would retire the next 3 straight batters to extinguish the rally. Meanwhile, Colby Perez would also enjoy 2 scoreless innings to open his day, but some sloppy play in the third would provide OA with a chance to take the lead. With a 1-out runner on first, Perez would uncork a wild pickoff throw to allow the runner to advance. A second error would quickly follow for Milford, this time on shortstop Matt Shaver that gave the Tigers runners at the corners with 1 away. OA would ultimately grab a run in the inning on an RBI groundout to take a 1-0 lead. Oliver Ames would soon fall victim to a couple of costly defensive gaffes in the bottom of the inning. With a runner on second base, Shaver would bloop a pitch out to shallow right. Coach Dion would initially hold the runner at third, but a bobble by the OA right fielder would give Justin Appleby a chance to come home to tie the game. With 2 down, the Tigers would have a chance to end the inning on a ground ball to short, but Chris Pearsons would have the ball go underneath his glove, and Shaver would have a chance to cross the plate with the go-ahead run. Fast forward to the top of the 6th with the score unchanged. Colby Perez would allow just his 5th hit of the game to catcher Jake Ehrlich, who would rumble his way into second base with a leadoff double. That would prompt a quick pitching change from Coach Dion, who would once again place the young Mario Lee into a key late-game situation. Lee would give fans a scare as he loaded the bases with 2 outs in the inning, but he would end up getting the job done, striking out Cooper Haggerty to end the inning with no runs scored. Milford would then head to the plate for their half of the 6th, looking for some much-needed insurance.
Here is the 3-1 pitch. That is up and in for ball 4. A bases-loaded walk. He will pitch with the bases loaded and nobody out as Justin Appleby sends the first pitch out to left field for a base hit. In to score comes Carter Scudo. The 2nd run of the inning. A different story here today. Now Matt Shaver sends a fly ball out to left center field. The left and center fielders collide. A hard collision in the outfield, and both players are down as multiple runs will score for Milford. 2 runs in.
It would be an ugly inning all the way around for Oliver Ames, as Milford would send 11 batters to the plate, scoring 5 runs to open up a 7-1 lead. Nick Marcolini would come out to pitch the 7th, and he would allow Oliver Ames to get a run back before bringing an end to another successful day at Pheno. Milford makes it 2 in a row as they top the Oliver Ames Tigers by a final score of 7-2. Weather permitting, we will have a busy week of sports coverage coming up next week, with more softball action on Monday, baseball on Wednesday, and a return to the gym for boys volleyball coverage on Thursday. That's all the time we have for this week. Thank you, as always, for joining us. And from all of us here at Milford TV, this is Tim Coet saying have a great week. So long, everybody.